Maria gratia plena, Dominus tecum benedicta in mulieribus et benedictus fructus ventris tui, Iesus. Sancte Michael, Sancte Petri. Okay, so this is about formation. Okay, I have given these classes many times, in many places, in many countries, in very many different formats, 10 hours, 12 hours, 6 hours, 3 hours, 1 hour and a half, etc. Here we have a bit more than 1 hour and a half, no, and tomorrow the same, no, or a bit less. Okay, let's see. Now I have to compress the things, and sometimes it's not easy when I get excited with some topic. But anyway, the difference also is that in English it's more difficult for me to. So sometimes I need the help of the audience to find some word. Sometimes I lack words to express what I want to express. Another caveat that I would like to say is that most of the things, especially in the second part, that I'm going to say are in the book, He Knows Not How. But not all of them, especially in this first part. And there are things in the book that I am not going to say, no, because we don't have time. So in some sense, they connect. There is some common part between the book and the classes, but some not common part. Okay, that is about formation. But formation is a very interesting topic, yeah, because it's what the work does. What the work does is to form people, no? And then people act freely in society, in the world, etc. So formation is linked to freedom. So if you want to be good and to be free, when you are free, when you exercise your freedom, you need formation to know and to be able to, not only to know, to be able to do what is good. And at the same time, formation requires freedom, because you cannot be formed if you are not free, as we will see later. Okay, that formation is the most important thing for us, is what what our Father says when he, in several places, but specifically in conversations, says that the work is a disorganized organization. And also says this an organized disorganization. He uses the two expressions in this, but the two of them mean the same, I think. So that means that so we are an organization, but we are disorganized in the sense that not everything is controlled. We don't want to control people. We want people that act freely in society, and when they do what they like to do, and I don't know only using the word want, but like, what they like to do, they do good. They do what is good. This is what we want. And nobody is controlling them and telling them in any specific case what they should do. Because they act freely, and when they act freely, and when they do what they like to do, they do good. No? This is what we want. If this is an absurd thing, no? But if the work was a chaos, no? But people are formed. That's fantastic. Instead, if we work like a Swiss watch, no, very precise, but in the end, people don't get formed. It's useless. It's useless. You can do many activities, you can do many things, but in the end, what is important for us is formation of people. Formation of people. So it's good reflecting on what formation is. Okay, this is what we are going to do in two parts. The first, which is a bit longer than the second, is more theoretical. So just bear with me. I think in the other seminars people were interested, no? Because that theoretical part helps you to understand many things that are behind your work of formation, and then the formation of yourself and of others. even if we here are putting the stress on formation of others, but it applies also to everyone, no? To each one of us. Okay. Then let's start saying that when we talk about formation or about a moral life in general, I find the difficulty or the obstacle that people think to know what we are talking about, and people think that they already know many concepts that we. So I used to start classes in moral theology in Rome, saying in the first day, so the most important concept of this subject is virtue. But when I say virtue, you think, do you understand what I am meaning? But my experience after many years teaching this subject, it's that what you are thinking of is very different from what I am thinking of. And humbly, what I am thinking of is much more beautiful. No? So you have to change and the same happens with moral norm. The same happens with conscience. The same happens with many concepts. No? Why? Why this happens? Because we have had a tremendous influence of voluntaristic morals for 7 centuries. So the voluntarism starts more or less. No, this is very complex. The voluntarism from the philosophical point of view is quite complex. I'm going to simplify very much, but anyway. So in the 14th century starts through William of Ockham, that takes advantage of some ideas of Scotus. No? Scotus is blessed, no? Is beato, no? Saint already. Yeah, are you sure? Yeah, okay. He said that he's canonized, I think. Okay, anyway. But he made some somersaults, philosophically speaking, and some things that are not very. And William Fogg can take advantage of that and develops the idea, and in the end, the voluntaristic morals starts. I'm going to explain some aspects of this. And then, little by little, people start reflecting from that point of view. And when we arrive to the 16th, 17th, mainly century, people are people in the Catholic Church are writing about morals and reflecting about morals from the voluntaristic point of view, from the point of view of William of Ockham. No? And they do that even when they are, even that group of authors, quite numerous or whatever, that are called commentators of St. Thomas, because they write commentaries on the Summa Theologica, for instance. But they are, and voluntarism is the opposite of the morals of St. Thomas, as we will see. So it's totally, so St. Thomas could not think of this, no? But they are commenting from the point of view of voluntarism St. Thomas, no? So, and this goes on to until or up to the 20th century. In the second part of the 20th century, in the second half, there are some authors that start saying, so, but this is not St. Thomas. No? If you study directly St. Thomas, you discover some other thing that is much more beautiful than this. Okay, because the morals have little by little concentrated and focused on the concept of obligation. And St. Thomas is not that, is very different from that. But still, we are still there. So with Veritatis Splendor, the Pope made an attempt not to, and had a very good influence in many people, but now it's not very much. So many people are talking of, so they want to put aside Veritatis Splendor, etc. But they don't realize that they are going back to a morals that is very, very ugly, no, and very sad. No? But anyway, Okay. So let's talk about some ideas. I'm going to try to explain what is behind voluntarism. I insist, this is very complex. No, it's much more complex than I am going to say. So this is very simplified, but at least you can have some ideas. I'm going to say three things about saying, no, I'm going to say two things because, okay, the other is more, just not to complicate the thing. The first is freedom. So William of Ockham had a very different concept of freedom than the one that it was before Holt or whatever by St. Thomas and many others, no? Which we now call freedom of indifference, because he thinks that that freedom means indifference. You are free when you are not inclined to any side. So the less inclined you are to some option, the freer you are. This is absurd. For St. Thomas, this is absurd. Because in the end, and we see the influence of this now, we have people that think, that make an opposition between freedom and nature. Freedom is, so nature is the realm of everything that is perfectly foreseeable and happens following some rules, and you can't do any other thing. And instead, freedom is the realm of your will, and you do whatever you want, etc. But for St. Thomas, this is absurd, because the will, which is where freedom resides, no? The will has something necessary and has a nature. And the nature is that the will is the necessary and unavoidable tendency to good. And you cannot, so will absolutely can't choose something that the reason understands as bad. So there is something necessary in freedom that you cannot avoid, you cannot change. But that is not a limitation of freedom, but is the support of freedom. Okay, so we will see that indifference have more, a lot of influence even in spiritualities in the church. No, I will say later something. Then the other aspect is, he says, the other aspect is the freedom of God. So God's freedom. He says, we are free. So which means that we can do whatever we want if it's in our possibilities. No, okay. But if we want to behave well, to do good, we can do whatever we want, but the limit of our freedom is the freedom of God. So what God wants, if God wants something, we cannot go. So we cannot do otherwise if we want to do good. Okay? So, but the freedom, so this is already very destructive. Okay, so yeah, because he's presenting the will of God as opposed to my will, the freedom of God as opposed to my. So God is my limit, no, instead of the opposite, which is the truth. No, that God is supporting my freedom. He's supporting me. He wants me to be happy, etc. God is the limit I find. No. But then this will be clearer if we see that he insists, saying that my freedom is limited. So as we have, the limit is the will of God. But the will of God, so the freedom of God has no limit. Okay, it's absolute, which is true. But for him, the fact that the freedom of God is absolute means that it's arbitrary. Because he says, if God cannot want something now that he didn't want yesterday, or the opposite, he is not absolutely free. He is not completely, fully free. No? Fully free means that he can change. He is not tied even by his own decisions. Okay? So this seems to defend the freedom of God, no? But in really is destroying the freedom of God, because a God like that cannot create a world with sense. He can create a world that now has a sense, and tomorrow that has a different sense, and yesterday another one. So, which means, and it's very important for morals, reason cannot grasp the reason by itself. The reason for things, the meaning of things, the meaning of the world, cannot grasp it because it changes. It depends on the will of God in each moment. By itself, reason can. So he needs a kind of. So he needs to develop, and in fact he does, channels by which God communicates His will in each moment to the person. He develops this. We are not going to go into this, but so that means that moral norm is always extrinsic to reason. You cannot know it by yourself. You need always a communication with God that happens in different ways, no, in several different ways, but it's external. Moral law is always external. It's not something that is, for St. Thomas, is internal. You remember, I suppose, you remember the definition of law that St. Thomas gives. Ordinatio rationis ad bonum comune habeo cui curam communitatis habet promulgata. So the first two words are very important. Ordinatio rationis. Law is an ordinatio rationis, a rational order. So which means that law is intrinsic to reason. When reason grasps very well the situation, he can grasp the moral norm. It can reach the moral norm. So it's intrinsic. Now, Occam makes it extrinsic. So it's always out of me and has to be communicated to me. But we end up saying that things are good because they are commanded, or things are bad because they are forbidden. So this is one of the conclusions of the voluntaristic morals. Mala quia prohibita. So this is bad because it has been forbidden. And many people think in this way. Many people say, so the Pope should change the moral law on contraception because so and so. Yeah, but so the contraception in the Catholic Church is bad because it has been forbidden. No, but it's not. So it's the opposite. So something is commanded because it's good, and something is forbidden because it's bad. Before it's good or bad, and then when we grasp that this is good or bad, then we can establish a moral norm that says you should do this or you shouldn't do this. Okay, but before reason has to grasp and then the moral norms are established as a universalization of the criteria that your reason gives you in confronting individual situations. When you confront this situation and you say, and your reason tells you, no, it's not good that you should have nuts there, no? Or it's not good, and then in other circumstances very different, it's not good that, then when your reason is able to grasp, to universalize this and say, no, homicide is never good, it's always bad. No, this is a moral norm. But you have understood before that this is not good, and then you can formulate the norm. Okay? For Occam, so the morals derived from the ideas of Occam, the law is the most important thing. And then by the law, you know what is good or bad. So it's true that the law helps you to understand some things, but the moral norm is a conclusion of a reasoning. It's not the starting point of the reasoning. Okay, even if for individual persons you trust other persons, no? But okay, a professor of physics can explain to you the law of gravity, but he cannot change it. He cannot change the law of gravity. But he can tell you, and maybe you don't understand anything, but you know by experience that it works in this way, etc., etc. Okay, more or less understandable. So the intrinsic character of the moral norm, as opposed to the extrinsic character that in voluntarism we have. Okay, more or less. Okay, then in the end, when this develops, and many people are following this kind, and they don't know. You read the primer, for instance. The primer is a very reliable manual of morals written in the first half of the 20th century, that in the chaos around the 60s and the 70s, etc., it was very orthodox and the conclusions when he analyzes every aspect, the conclusions are good. No, it's very orthodox. But you see the whole plan of the book. You just see the table of contents. This is absolutely morals of obligation. This is absolutely voluntarism, but very well used. But people are completely used to this kind of reasoning. Okay, then in the end we have, again, there are many more, and this is more complicated, but to summarize, two points of view to morals. To morals as a science, but morals also as life. No? 2 points of view of morals. In this case, more as a science. So, for some people, many people, morals is the reflection, the study, the research about the law that has to be observed. Okay? And on the other side, we had St. Thomas and Aristotle and his friends, no? That for them, morals is the reflection, the study, the research, etc., the science, about the life worth living. What is the life that is worth living? No, what gives fullness to your life? Okay, these are two different points of view. So, for the first one, what is the principal concept? So everything starts with law, and the principal concept is obligation that derives from the law. The law creates an obligation on you to respect it. This is that's why we call this moral of obligation. Obligation is the main concept, and you see, for instance, the primer or many others, good and bad manuals. They are organized. So you just look at the table of contents, and there are two things that call your attention. The second I will say later. But the first is that it's organized by the commandments. So with the idea of this commandment, what does it mean? What I am obliged to do by this commandment. But for St. Thomas, this is very different. St. Thomas, let me see if I want to say this now or later. I will say in 1 minute. For St. Thomas, this is very, very, very different. He doesn't organize the thing by the commandments. He starts from a very different point of view. So in this, law and obligation. Law and the obligation that law generates. So obligation, the main concept. On this side, what is the main concept? The main concept is virtues. Is virtue. But again, probably some of you not, but probably many of you, when I say virtue, think in something very different from what I am thinking. We will say later. But virtue is and St. Thomas organizes his moral in the Secunda Pars by the virtues. He explains them. And what is the starting point? The starting point, and for many people so for people who know St. Thomas, this is not a surprise, but for people who doesn't know very well him and have the idea of, a medieval guy that was very scholastic, very organized, and this can come as a surprise. When he starts his moral theology, his first question is not about the commandments, it's not about the obligation, it's not about the law of God, it's about happiness. the first thing is, what does happiness consist in? This is his first question. So he ends the prima pars and starts the secunda pars, prima secunda, and he says, after we have studied in the prima pars what comes out from God, creation, we have considered God himself, the Trinity, etc., and then the creation, the angels, the man, etc. Now, so what comes out from God, now we are seeing how the rational creatures go back to God. No? It's an exitus reditus. No? Go back to God, and this is moral life. No? And then he asks, what does happiness consist in? And you can think, oh, what many people could think, what does happiness have to do with morals? Well, happiness is a very important concept, but for morals. Yeah, but for St. Thomas, this is the most important concept. Morals. Why? This is not because it's more beautiful. It is more beautiful, no? What you choose between happiness and obligation, everybody will say happiness, no? But it's not because it's more beautiful. It's because it's more real. It's more real. Because, when he is studying morals from the point of view of happiness, with happiness as the starting concept, he is placing himself in the point of view of the person who acts. When you study from the point of view of obligation, you are looking from what we call now the point of view of the third person, as opposite to the point of view of the first person. The first person is the acting person. The third person is something that observes from outside to see if you are complying or not to the law. No? Okay? He is placing. Why? Because he says we always act in every human action, even the most desperate actions that you can imagine, you are looking for happiness. And this is unavoidable. And so he starts considering what happiness consists in. Because if you don't have the correct idea of happiness, you will frustrate your life. You know, what happiness consists in. And then he proceeds by eliminating things. He's in the different questions of in the different articles of the second question of the Summa of the Prima Secundae. He starts, so could happiness consist in riches? And he reasons, no. In next article, in honors, in pleasures, in power, etc. Now he analyzes different ideas that can be used for people as their final end, as their ultimate end, and trying to show that you cannot get happiness for this. This could be an element of happiness. No, pleasure is an element of happiness, of course, no. But it's not. The happiness doesn't consist in pleasure or in honors. In honors, all of us have the tendency to be respected by the others, to be appreciated, etc. So this is part of the ideal human being that we have in mind. But but it's not that. There is something else, no? Okay. So what we are going to see is better now, no? But so what is important for us now is that we are taking the position of the first person. We are analyzing the moral act from the point of view of the acting person, and not from the legislator. Okay, this is the first person point of view. Okay, and okay, that means that, okay, if we are placed in this position and happiness is there, happiness is our final end, our ultimate end. And this is very important because for the third person point of view, final end is not that important. What is important is if you respect the law or not. You know your obligation, you are fulfilling your obligations or not. Of course, fulfilling our obligations is very important. The concept of obligation, we are not saying, no, happiness, obligation, no. Obligation is very important. but obligation will not have any power of motivation for me, of moral motivation, if I don't expect happiness to come out of fulfilling my obligations. Okay, to fulfill your obligations is important, but it's important because there is something else. Okay, so the ultimate end is important, and we are going to reflect now about this. If you look, this is the second thing that I said before, when you take one of these manuals, orthodox, good, etc., two things, you look at the table of contents, and two things call your attention. The first is that it's organized by the obligations. The second, that the treaty or the part of St. Thomas about the ultimate end or disappears or is presented because St. Thomas talks about it, and so they are following St. Thomas, but you read that and it's presented as another obligation. So the ultimate end is something that you should reach, no? But it's presented as another obligation. They haven't grasped with what the ultimate end is for St. Thomas. And this is very important, because when you have an end, so your practical reason, we have a reason. The reason has two uses, speculative and practical. Okay? With the speculative reason, you understand how things are. No? How the trees grow, etc., how the blood circulates in how the law of gravity works, or the relativity law, or whatever. You understand how things are, and from one truth you can go on to reach another, etc. The practical reason is the intellectual reason, the speculative reason answers the question how this is, or what this is. No? The practical reason answers the questions, what is good for me to do? So, how my behavior should be. Okay. No? But if your behavior has to be according to the law, and the law is the ultimate instance of morality, you just have to comply. Your reason has very little to do. If you understand that your happiness is your ultimate end, that means that your reason always proceeds from happiness to the present circumstance. You have an idea of happiness, and this influences, even if you don't think of it explicitly, this influences your decisions now. And so, to reflect, to think, and to consider the ultimate end is very important. An example, and a triple example, about voluntarism, that can connect with some experiences you have. This example is to go from some place to another. In Rome, when I gave my classes, I always used Sant'Eugenio, Sant'Eugenio Basilica, probably many of you know, and Saint Peter's. No? Okay, Sant'Eugenio is the first. Is the starting point, and you go to St. Peter's. Let's imagine that this is the facade of Sant'Eugenio. I am coming out of the church. If you know Rome, you know that St. Peter's is there, no? Is there. Okay? Okay, but let's put three examples. The first guy comes out of the church, and he is told, you have to go to some place. But don't worry, you don't know where it is. But don't worry, because I give you an earpiece, no? You put it in your and we will tell you what to do. No? And then, okay, we come out of the church, and the voice said, turn to the left. Okay, turn to the left. And then I walk, I cross the street, via Flaminia, and I go ahead, and I reach the river. No? And then the voice said, cross the river. And you say, no, I don't want. And I go to the right. No? This is a bad action. No? Because why is a bad action? Because it's not according to the voice. And if we are arriving to the bridge, I turn cross the bridge, and I turn to the left, this is a bad action. Why? Because it's not coherent with the voice. Okay? Second example. So this is the extremely voluntarist. The first is the extremely voluntarist person. Things are good because they are commanded. And you don't have, your reason can say nothing about the good action. You just have to receive some revelation, some indication from God. And that you just obey rules. And if you obey rules, you will end, and the voice is good, God's voice is good, you will end up in St. Peter's, in fact. No? But it depends. So your reason has nothing to do. Yeah, the only thing he has to do is to understand the voice. Now turn to the left. Sorry, I didn't understand. What did you say? No, I said to the left. Okay. This is the only role of reason in this extremely. So the examples are okay. You understand, no? That has limitations and is have limitations. The extremely voluntaristic person. The second is the Saint Thomas guy. No? He gets out of the church, and he said, and he is told, so you have to go to St. Peter's. Okay, do you know where it is? Yes, okay. Go. And then what do? You turn to the left. And then you arrive to the bridge. And then you have three ways. Turn to the left, to turn to the right, or to cross the bridge. And if you turn to the left, it's good. Because there are other bridges you can cross later. No? Eventually you will have to cross the bridge because the Vatican is on the other side. But there are several bridges. You can cross the bridge, and it's a good decision too. And then on the other side of it, you can turn to the left, or you can even cross through Prati, if you know the way, because in Prati is a neighborhood designed in the 19th century in the area of anti-clericalism, and you can never see the Vatican from any place. So the streets are traced in such a way that you cannot see the Vatican until you get there. Okay, but if you know the way, you can also go through there. And those decisions are good. Yes, but if I say, no, I go to the right, instead of crossing the bridge or going to the left, this is a bad decision. No, but what makes this decision bad? Or what makes the others good? And there are several. The coherence of the decision with the final destination. If I cross the bridge, this is coherent with the final destination. If I turn to the left instead of crossing the bridge, this is coherent with to turn to the right, no. No, because I am going in the opposite direction. No? Okay, so reason has a role. In this morals, reason has a role. It knows where we are going, and has to elaborate a plan to get there. And the plan offers, in many occasions, several choices valid, but not only are valid. Not all of them are valid, but there are several. Maybe in some occasions there are only one that is valid. No, in some. Because there are two options and one lives there and the other there. Okay, no, but reason has to grasp the destination and then to look for coherence in my action to be able to arrive there. Okay, this is clear, no? So that's why finality. No, finality in the sense of end, of to have an end, to have a goal, etc., and reason are united. So that's why the reflection on the ends, on the ultimate end, is very important for St. Thomas, because reason is important. The two of them go together. If the consideration of the final end disappears, reason has nothing to do. That's why, and then all the weight of the decision goes to the will. That has to comply with the law, which is external. And that's why we call it voluntarism. Not because the will is making too much effort, which is absurd, because this cannot be done. This is impossible. Okay, this is another matter. Not because you see sometimes in the voluntaristic guy, and you have the tendency to say to him, relax, you are putting too much effort. But the problem is not in the will. No, because whatever happens, you can't want the good too much. It's impossible, because there is not a measure beyond what to want the good is bad. So you have to want the good. So your will have to want the good with all its power, with all its might, with everything. No? So, but we call it voluntarism because the will is like inflamed, because it has to occupy the place of the reason, because the reason is not doing its job. Okay, the reason has nothing to do, just to understand what the commandment means and apply. You cannot make a project for your life. You cannot make a plan how to go there. Okay? The third example is a combination of the two, which could be the voluntaristic Christian. Because the third is you go out of the church and you are told, you are going to St. Peter. So he knows the destination. The first one didn't know. The second, yes. The third also knows. But he is told, so, but take this, you put it here, and we will guide you. We will help you. So, and then, so this is a combination of the two. No? The Christian person knows where he is going. But he, again, is more similar to the first than to the second, because his reason has nothing to do, because everything will be told to him. Okay? And his reason has just to understand the meaning of the message. And then so everything relies, or everything relies on the will to comply. Okay? So then let's reflect about the final end. Okay, the ultimate end. So important. I said this before. I'm going to say it, I think, more clearly now. It's important because when we act in this direction. But we plan in this direction. So practical reason goes from the end to the means. This is always like that. So, for instance, I get out of my house. Why? There should be a why. No? There should be a reason. Okay, if you don't have a reason, you don't get out of it. There is always some reason. Because I want to buy a ticket for the bus. Okay, but why? Why? No, because I want to take the bus, obviously. But why? No, because I want to go to the other side of the city. But why? No, because there is a hospital there, and I know that so-and-so is in the hospital. And I want to visit him. But why? No, because he's a very good guy, and he's a friend of mine, and I want to... Or because he's a very rich guy, and I want to make friends with him. But why? No, because I want to defraud him later. No? But why? No, because I want him to suffer. No, because I hate him, or because I want to have more money. I don't care about him. No, but why do you want to have more money? No, because I want to build a house in the Bahamas. No. Or because I want to influence politics with my money. But why? No, because I want the country to... So there is always a why. As reason plans, so I want to build a house in the Bahamas, but I don't have money, so I have to work. But if I work, it will take to me 20 years to have enough money to build a house. So maybe I can defraud somebody rich. And okay, I make the plan in this direction, but I act on this direction. If there is no final end, ultimate end, reason cannot proceed back, because it starts from the ends. No, and then there should be something that is wanted, not because of something that is beyond, but something that is wanted because it's wonderful. This is the ultimate end. So let's reflect on this. After this, we can make a break, but this is not 5 minutes. It's a bit more. Okay. So I have had always the impression that when you talk about the final end, the ultimate end, people are thinking on so they know. No? So you know what I am talking about, right? No? So everybody's very shy now. Okay. But I have always had the impression that people think of on the Christian life, good people, like a kind of race with obstacles that you have to reach to the end, no? And then you run, no? And from time to time you have an obstacle and you have to jump a hurdle of an obstacle or whatever, and you have to jump, and it's uphill, no? Because it's tiring, no? Christian life, it requires an effort to live well, and then you have to reach the end with all the obstacles standing. You cannot put it down and put one down, no? The experience says that you put many down, no? And then you look, and then you kneel down and ask for forgiveness. First you receive the absolution, which means that the obstacle is already put as if nothing happened, and you go on, no? And then you cross the line finally. Wow, I arrived, no, to the, and then you are placed on a podium, and they give you a trophy, and you show the trophy very happy, or the medal, the gold medal or whatever, and everybody applauds, etc. Yeah, but the trophy or the medal has nothing to do with the race. It's just an extrinsic relation. If you get to the end of the race without destroying any obstacle, you receive a medal, but the medal has nothing to do with the race. This cannot be. So people think of this. I will receive a prize. So the medal or the trophy in this case is heaven, no? Because but the heaven then has nothing to do with life in this world. No, this cannot be. But I hope you agree that people think in this way. Then it comes very useful, very useful. I will use two examples of Saint Augustine. The first one is what I am going to say now. The two of them are very surprising at the beginning, very disconcerting. You read them for the first time and say, wow. I remember the first time I read what I am going to say now, I said, wow, it sounds very suggestive. There is something, but I cannot. And then you stop, think a bit. You don't need to be Einstein, no? And wow. So he's playing with words. He's a master on rhetoric, no? He's playing with words. The play with words works very well in Latin and in Italian, less in Spanish, less in English. But I think it's understood because he plays in Italian. We use the word fine, so the end, no? And finire, which is the verb. But in Spanish we say fine y terminar, which is different. In English, end and finish. No, the words don't place that well, but it's understandable. So then he says, and this is an example that you find many times in St. Augustine. I found it in different discourses, homilies, etc., like 10 times. So he used it very many times, this example. No? He says, when we, in the Christian concept, in the context of Christian life, we use the word end, ultimate end. No? We are not using the word end in the sense we say the bread is finished, but rather in the way we say the dress is finished. So there is somebody here that knows a bit of Latin. Yes, recently, 1 month ago, a priest, the vicar of Brazil, that attended classes I gave in an hour course there some years ago, he discovered another and sent it to me. No? Saint Augustine says, Ic est finis amoris nostri, finis quo perficamur, non quo consumamur, finitur cibus, finitur vestis. So, cibus, food is finished, the dress is finished, but differently. What is the difference? When do you say, it goes on, but when do you say the bread is finished? So when there was bread here, but there is no bread anymore, because we have consumed it. When do you say the dress is finished? When it's ready to use. So it's the opposite. So the one is the end of what is consumed, and the other is the end of what is perfected, and is finished. No? And now you can use it. So he says, in the Christian concept, we don't use the word end in the sense we say the bread is finished. So you reach the end of the race. No, but the dress is finished. So you have completed something. So it recalls you the idea not of consumption. You have finished your time. No, but the idea of perfection, of building something, of construction, of finalizing something that now is as God wanted it to be. No? And this is the idea of the person making the dress. You have Santa, and the idea of the dress pre-exists in his mind. Okay? And that's why the person says, no, this has to be longer or shorter, or no, we have to whatever it here, or this has to be this color, because he has an idea before. Then God has an idea of us. So the dress is finished so the dress is you. The dress is the person. And your Christian life is building something, is constructing something, is, okay? You understand what I mean? No? Then the dress is yourself. You are completing yourself to reflect really the image of Christ. And this is the end of the race. It's not a race, it's just a building of a... And you will never enter heaven until the image is finished. And that is the sense of the mercy of God of purgatory. But you cannot so if some part is missing, a sleeve, for instance, you will not enter heaven. You have to complete the dress. So the sooner you complete it, the happier you will be. No, so that's to say that it's useless to. So it makes no sense to renounce some virtue. So I live very well chastity, but charity, I don't care that much. No, not very well. No, this is not acceptable. No, because the dress will not be finished. Will be lacking some buttons or some sleeve or some. So you have to complete it with the grace of God, of course. But okay. So St. Augustine. Now, so St. Augustine, again, no? Final end, the ultimate end is very important because it's the dress finished. No? Then Kant arrives, Kant, and says, okay, you say, so the classic morals, that the ultimate end is happiness. So, which means that this is the motivation for your actions, always happiness. But I say that if you base moral on happiness, the morals you will end up building is an egoistic moral. Okay? Instead, you should take up your ultimate end as the most important concept, obligation. moral consists, a good moral life consists in fulfilling your obligations, not on reaching happiness, because then you will have okay, this is his objection. I'm going to answer this objection. So the objection is understandable, no? Okay, with 3 ideas. The 3 of them are related, and in the end, they are the same. The first one. Okay, Mr. Kant, no? You say that your ultimate end should not be your last motivation, should not be happiness, but should be obligation. Okay, but you are talking about how things should be. But I am not talking about that. I'm talking about how things are. So I don't say you should pursue your happiness. You say you should pursue your obligations and not your happiness. I'm not saying you should pursue your happiness and not the... I am saying that it's unavoidable, that you are made like that, and that the search for happiness is always present in your practical reason, and you cannot avoid it. This is there. No, even in your most desperate actions, is there. So we are talking about different things. You are talking about how things should be. I am talking about how things are. Second idea. The mere existence of 2 possible ultimate ends is incompatible with the rational freedom. So the mere existence of 2 final ultimate ends, and you have to choose this or this, is incompatible with rational freedom. Why? Okay, now an example. Imagine I have here an orange. Okay, can you see the orange? Okay, and I have here a screwdriver. No? And I ask you, which one is better? And the answer is always. The always is always. It depends. It's obvious, no? It depends, but it depends from what? Yeah, what is your goal? No? Okay, you cannot compare them unless you establish something beyond and you project the 2. While they are in parallel, you cannot compare them. If I say now to eat, now nobody says it depends. No, it's obviously the orange. If I say to put a nail on the wall, okay, none of them is very adequate, but I prefer the screwdriver that has some hard parts and can, okay, which means that when you say it depends, what you are asking for is for a goal, no? When you have a goal, you can compare them. You have to project the 2 of them to the same goal. But if this is so, when Kant says no happiness, obligation, it means that you have an idea of what is good for man, and you think that obligation provides more to it than happiness. But that means that these are not ultimate ends, are penultimate ends in the end. So the existence of 2 possible ultimate ends is incompatible with rational freedom, because reason cannot choose unless it has some idea of what is beyond. But if there is something beyond, they are not ultimate ends. Where you're interested in is not obligation, is in that other idea. Okay? Then the third idea is the same again. No? Does it make sense to ask, why should I fulfill my obligations? Yes, it makes sense, the question. Does it make sense to ask, why should I be happy? No, it makes no sense. Why? Because there is no why. Because if there were something what I should be happy. Happiness will not be the ultimate end. Happiness is the why of every other thing, of any other thing. Is the ultimate end. So I can ask myself, why should I fulfill my obligations? Because there is something beyond obligation. But I cannot ask myself, why should I be happy? Because there's nothing beyond happiness. So happiness is never a means to reach something that is beyond. No, it's just the end. It's just something that you... Of course, when Kant says that moral based on happiness is egoistic, is because he's using a different concept of happiness, what we call the hedonistic happiness, which could be described as the experience of pleasant moments. In Spanish I would say la experiencia de estar contento, but in English contento you say happy, and feliz you say happy. So it's the same word for two different things. No, it's not easy to express for me. No? So the experience of being in a pleasant situation. No, okay. So happiness is not about quantity. It's not about the accumulation of good experience, of pleasant experience. It's about sense. It's about meaning. Okay, but we use the other concept, this concept of Aristotle and St. Thomas. For them, happiness is what is the word that I use for this? Is the fulfilled aspiration, the aquietamiento de la voluntad. How can I say this? The quietness of the will. So when you reach your goal, you just rest and enjoy. No? Eternally, when you find your ultimate end, you will just enjoy, and your will not wish any other thing, because this is it. This is it. This is what I have been looking for all my life, and then you don't. Okay. So Martin Ronheimer, following an idea of Robert Spemann, etc., says even that morals is not about what you should do. Morals is about what are your deepest aspirations. It's about that. I always think, in that annual course in Brazil, they proposed to watch Aladdin, no? A movie, this new version, which is similar to the cartoon, but with many effects, etc., no? With real actors, no? And at the beginning, I said, okay. But then I said, oh, so let's go, no? Let's enjoy it. And then I became more and more interested, because it's about wishes. It's about wishes. So the genie appears and says, so you have 3 wishes. Okay, and the bad guy, when he steals the lamp, no? And so he immediately asks for things, no? In fact, but to the good guy, the genie says, but think carefully about it, because not any wish is equal as the other. If you ask for some amount of money, the second you will want more, and then okay, and the bad guy asks for money, for power, for the others to submit to his will, and he gets it. He gets the tremendous power and gets inside the lamp, which means that if you don't have the right wishes, the right desires, you still are free, and you have tremendous power, but you are limited. Your freedom is limited. Just you are limiting yourself. Instead, the other gains time, or gains or whatever. Takes time, no, and says, okay, I have to think about it, and doesn't ask immediately. And then he ends up asking for life, when he's about to die, for love, and for freedom. So, wonderful things, no? Okay, not for power, not for others to submit to my will. But you manage, but you are blocking yourself, no? So, it's very interesting for this. What is worthwhile wishing? Morals is about this. It's about what are your deepest aspirations. And then you go to the gospel and you see that James and John came and knelt down in front of the Lord and says, we want you to grant what we are going to ask from you. Wow. And the Lord says, what do you want me to do for you? Wow. Wow, we have read many times this, but this is incredible to imagine that you are in front of Jesus Christ and he says, what do you want me to do for you? Wow, it's not Aladdin. You have 3 wishes. No, you have just one. 3 is too many. I just need one. If I get this, everything else, I don't care about anything else. So just one is enough. But what do you want? What are you interested really in life? So any wish is equal to the other. Experience shows that not. So you can find friends and relatives and people that have their idea is of the fulfilled life. Their main idea in life, the ultimate end is a professional status, no? For instance, no? And maybe after many years of working hard, they reach there. But they feel frustrated because they have destroyed their family, for instance, no? Or so this is a good end, but not a good final, a good ultimate end. This is not happiness. This can contribute to happiness, but it's not happiness. If you choose a wrong thing, you will be frustrated. It's important that you guess what is. And can we proceed by trial and error? No, because we have just one life. If you fail, you have no other opportunity. So we should be able to say in advance something, reflecting about what is good. This is morals. Reflecting what is the deepest aspiration of the human nature. What is really the thing worthwhile wishing? No? The siren. Then, what this means in this situation and in this situation. And this is how St. Thomas proceeds. No? And then he says the virtues in the end as the characteristics that fulfill a good personality, a person that can enjoy life. No? Then, because in 5 minutes we stop. Because happiness, what does happiness consist in then? Because not every idea of what will make you happy is equally valid. Now, to me, will have it to be able to play tennis every day or to win Wimbledon. Yeah, but you will win Wimbledon and you realize that it's not enough. You still want something else. So this is not happiness. Is not this something. So happiness has to be something that gives reason of itself. So something that you don't. If we can talk of happiness as a kind of life, as an activity, it has to be an activity that you do not for anything else. I play tennis. Why? No, because I enjoy making friends with people and because I want to be in good shape, no? Because it's good for my health. So what you are looking for is not playing tennis, it's health, friendships, is okay, which is good, no? But this is not happiness. Happiness is something that you want just because of it. You don't want it for anything else. You want it because it's wonderful doing that. What kind of activity is there that is worthwhile doing just for the sake of it? Not for anything else, but just because it's wonderful doing it? The Greeks had already an answer. In a non-Christian context, they answered to this question, contemplation. And then you understand that it's very coherent with the Christian idea. Because in happiness, in eternal happiness, we will be contemplating God. And this is what happiness consists in. But they talk, and it's very, very good, very useful, about contemplation of truth. Contemplation of truth. but it's very useful for us. But then it comes, so about contemplation, as I give another class in the annual courses about contemplation and detachment, so I'm not going to repeat it, although that thing, no? But contemplation is to allow God to dominate you. Okay, but I'm not, and just going to use the other quotation by St. Augustine, which is more complex than the first one, but it's wonderful, it's wonderful. He says, he's talking to the people in a homily or a discourse. Sometimes you see if you read the sermons, he interacts with people, no? And at some point he says, think of a beautiful scenery. Think of a pretty face. Think of a delicious smell. Think of a very tasty meal. Now, if you can, remove the scenery, remove the face, remove the smell, remove the meal. What is there left? That's God. And that's what we are looking for. A bit disconcerting, no? Okay. What is he saying? You look at a beautiful scenery and you say, wow, beautiful. No? Why? Because you like it. But why you like it? Because you have a tendency to beauty. So you have an aspiration for beauty. And you see beauty reflected in that scenery. But beauty is presented in that scenery as a scenery can show beauty. And not only, as this scenery can show beauty, because you can see another scenery very different from this one and beautiful itself. And this is the way they present beauty is very different from the way a human face presents beauty. So, which means that you have a tendency to beauty, but you like this because beauty is particularized here. It's just a small part of beauty here, and you like it, but you are never satisfied. You, after seeing that, you want to see it again, or you want to see another beautiful thing again, because this is just a spark of beauty, and your aspiration is not to a spark, it's to beauty itself. So remove the scenery. What remains there? What is left there? Beauty. That's God. Which means in everything that you like, even the worst things, you are looking for God. And then you arrive to his conclusion. So God, he writes in his Confessions, I was throwing myself under every pleasant thing in this life, power, pleasure, etc. And I was always restless. And then you shout. We read this in the breviary 2 days ago. You shouted, and you broke my deafness. And then I discovered that we made us for you. And our heart is restless until we rest on you. So you are looking in every decision, even when you commit a sin, you are looking for God. You are looking for something that only in God you will find. And this, you have a spark, but it's never satisfied. You are never satisfied. You always want more, until you rest in God. You understand what I mean? Then you understand what Chesterton used to say, a man who knocks at the door of a brothel, maybe he doesn't know, but he's asking for God. He's looking for God. He will not find it there. It's very interesting. So you like things because they reflect in a very, very limited and very particularized way God. They reflect God. And you like them for that. Imagine, but you have a tendency for the whole thing, for God Himself. And you will be always frustrated while you keep looking for the reflections instead of looking for God itself. Then, to be able to look for them, we have to orient our tendencies to God. This is to purify our tendencies. To purify is not to, is to orient our tendencies to God, our tendencies to pleasure, that we find God there. And if God wants me to have this pleasure, I like it, but if God doesn't want, I don't want to. I don't want it too. The tendency to the appreciation of others, to love and to be in love, many tendencies, many different tendencies, to purify that tendencies. When you have your tendencies purified, so looking to what fulfills their aspirations, then you have reached virtues, and you enjoy. We will talk later about it. This is to make the dress, to finalize the dress. So, virtues. And then we, see, with this I finished now. This liturgical prayer in the breviary, I think it's in the Lauds of Saturday and the third week of the Psalterium. Said, Laudente Domine era nostra, laudet anima, laudet et vita, et quia tui muneris est quod sumus, tuum sit omne quod vivimus. So may our mouths praise you. May our thoughts praise you. May even our life praise you. So we praise God not only with our words, with our thoughts, also with our lives. In everything we do, this is contemplation. In everything we do, we are dominated, pleasantly dominated by God. No? Doing what is pleasing to Him, and we enjoy that. No? And we are, even if we don't think specifically of God, because we are resolving some professional matter, for instance, we are talking to God. Our life is talking to God. No? And quia tui muneris est quod sumus, tuum sit omne quod vivimus. And precisely because our mere existence is just a gift from you, it may be years, everything will live. This is contemplation. This is opening our hearts to God. No? This is what formation is about. So you could think that but it's contemplation. Formation in the work is about unity of life. It's about contemplation. This is our goal in life. And this is our goal in okay, we have to go step by step. But this is what we want to reach. To help people to be contemplative people. Okay, we make a break.